Greetings, dear audience. Before we dive into today's tale, we invite you to share your location in the comments below. And remember to show your support by liking and subscribing. The evening air in Los Angeles carried a crisp coolness as Miles Carter pulled into the long driveway of his Beverly Hills home. The grand estate, nestled behind a private gate, had once symbolized security, success, and love. Now, as he stepped out of his sleek black Audi, something about it felt off. Maybe it was the fact that his wife, Lauren, had been acting strangely for weeks. Maybe it was the late-night work meetings, the sudden increase in her social outings, or the way she had started pulling away from him. Miles wasn't the kind of man who jumped to conclusions. He was a high-profile defense attorney, trained to analyze situations with precision. But the nagging feeling in his gut told him that something was wrong. As he stepped inside, the house was eerily quiet. The faint scent of Lauren's expensive Chanel perfume lingered in the air. But she was nowhere to be seen. He placed his leather briefcase on the marble counter and poured himself a glass of aged whiskey. The moment he took his first sip, his phone buzzed. A text from Connor Dade, his private investigator. "Email Connor. We need to talk. I have what you asked for." Miles exhaled, running a hand through his neatly styled hair. He had been right. Just a few weeks ago, Miles hadn't considered the possibility that Lauren could be cheating. They had been together for 15 years. And despite the ups and downs, he had always believed their marriage was built on mutual respect and trust. But then, the little things started adding up. First, she had become obsessed with her phone, always turning the screen away when he walked by. Then, there were the mysterious weekend trips, supposedly for work. And the biggest red flag? She had stopped wearing her wedding ring. That's when Miles decided to act, not react. He hired Connor Dade, a top-tier private investigator, to quietly monitor Lauren's activities. The decision had been painful. But now, as he stared at his phone, he knew it had been the right call. That weekend, Miles and Lauren hosted an extravagant gala at their home, an annual event where Los Angeles elite gathered to drink, network, and show off their wealth. Miles, dressed in a sharp navy suit, worked the room effortlessly, shaking hands with business moguls, Hollywood executives, and high-profile attorneys. Lauren, stunning in a form-fitting black dress, floated through the crowd, laughing a little too loudly, drinking a little too much. Then, he saw him, Brandon Huxley, a wealthy real estate mogul, infamous for his ruthless business tactics and even more infamous for his habit of sleeping with married women. Miles had seen how Lauren's eyes lit up when Brandon walked in. He had seen how she gravitated toward him throughout the night, whispering into his ear, giggling like a woman half her age. And when he walked past them near the bar, he heard just enough. "Don't worry, baby, he'll never find out." Miles didn't react. He simply smirked and sipped his whiskey. Because what neither of them knew was that he already had proof. Later that night, after the last guest had left and Lauren was pretending to be exhausted, Miles received a phone call from Connor. "You might want to sit down for this," Connor said. Miles did. Connor laid it all out: times, dates, hotel bookings, surveillance footage. Lauren and Brandon had been meeting up for months, at hotels at Brandon's penthouse, even in Miles' own home. The final blow? The most recent encounter had taken place while Miles was in court fighting to win a high-profile case. Miles tightened his grip on the phone. His jaw clenched. "You sure about all this?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with controlled fury. Connor didn't hesitate. 100%. I have photos, videos, and bank transactions proving she's been spending money he gave her. This is airtight." Miles closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the betrayal. Then, he exhaled, his mind already shifting into strategy mode. "Send everything to my personal email," he instructed. "Done," Connor replied. "What's your next move?" Miles took another sip of his whiskey, his expression unreadable. "Now," he said, "now, I take back everything that's mine." And with that, the beginning of the end was set in motion. Miles leaned back in his chair, staring at the email Connor had just sent. His hands were steady, his pulse controlled, but rage simmered beneath the surface. Every attachment was a knife to the heart. There were photos of Lauren sneaking into Brandon Huxley's penthouse, Pictures of them at an upscale restaurant, kissing in a private booth. A final image showed Lauren in their own home, wearing the lingerie Miles had bought her, but she wasn't wearing it for him. He exhaled slowly, his legal mind kicking in. Emotions wouldn't win this war. Strategy would. Lauren thought she was untouchable. She thought she could cheat on him, spend his money, and keep the perfect image of the loving wife. But she had underestimated him. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. Miles didn't waste time. The next morning, he set his plan in motion. The first step was the finances. He contacted his personal banker and had all shared accounts frozen. Any funds that belonged solely to him were transferred into new private accounts under his name only. Lauren would wake up one day and realize her cards were declined. Next, he secured his legal footing. Miles met with his divorce attorney, who was thrilled with the evidence Miles had gathered. "This is a slam dunk," the lawyer said, flipping through the folder of photos. "With this, you'll keep the house, the assets, and she'll walk away with nothing." Miles smirked. "That's the idea." Then came the corporate destruction. Lauren had built her career on networking and reputation. Brandon Huxley was a known shark in real estate, but his business thrived on image and connections. If his investors found out he was sleeping with a married woman, his empire could collapse. Miles had just the right people to tip off. He anonymously leaked information to key members in Brandon's network. By the time the scandal broke, Brandon's investors would be pulling out faster than he had from Miles' wife. By the end of the week, everything was in place. Miles played his part perfectly, acting completely normal around Lauren, even kissing her goodbye as she left for another, late meeting. He knew exactly where she was going. Tonight, she had a date with Brandon at his penthouse. Miles had other plans. He booked a private table at a restaurant directly across from Brandon's building. From there, he had a perfect view of the penthouse balcony. Connor joined him, setting up a long-range camera. "She has no idea," Connor muttered, adjusting the lens. "She will soon," Miles replied, sipping his whiskey. A few minutes later, the penthouse lights flickered on. Lauren stepped onto the balcony, laughing, sipping a glass of wine. Brandon followed behind her, placing a hand on the small of her back. The camera shutter snapped, capturing the moment. "That's the one," Miles said, satisfied. "Let's ruin them." The next morning, Miles woke up early, showered, shaved, and put on his best tailored suit. Today was going to be a long one. At exactly 9 o'clock, the first domino fell. Lauren received a notification on her phone. Her bank transaction was declined. She frowned, trying another card. Declined. A moment later, her phone rang, her financial advisor. "Lauren, I need to inform you that your accounts have been frozen." Her blood ran cold. "What?" she snapped. "The primary account holder, Miles, has moved all assets into private accounts. You have no legal access." Lauren's hands shook as she tried to process the words. "Miles wouldn't do this," she whispered. But deep down, she knew. Oh yes, he absolutely would. By 11 o'clock, news of Brandon Huxley's affair had leaked into the real estate world. Major investors started pulling out. By 2 o'clock, Brandon's board members were calling for an emergency meeting. And at 5 o'clock, Lauren's work email exploded. Her inbox was flooded with urgent messages. The scandal had gone public. Her colleagues were talking, whispering. She could see the looks in their eyes. She had spent years crafting her reputation. And now, within hours, it was crumbling. That night, Lauren stormed into their home, expecting to find Miles waiting for her, ready to argue. Instead, she found an empty house. No suitcases, no clothes, no sign of her husband. Panic surged through her. She rushed to their bedroom, flinging open the closet. Half of it was empty. And then she saw it. A single white envelope, placed neatly on her nightstand. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Inside was a printed email. The subject line read, "The end. Lauren, I know everything. You should have been smarter. You should have respected what we had. But you got sloppy. And now? Now you get to live with your choices. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. The house is mine. The bank accounts are mine. The cars, the assets, all mine. You get nothing. Brandon won't save you. He's too busy watching his empire burn." Enjoy your new life. I hear karma's a bitch. Miles. Lauren collapsed onto the bed, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She tried calling Miles. The number was disconnected. She tried texting him. Message failed to send. She had lost everything. She had ruined herself. And the worst part? There was no one to blame but herself. Meanwhile, miles away, Miles Carter sat in his new penthouse, sipping a glass of whiskey, watching the news report on Brandon's financial collapse. He smirked. Justice served. And for the first time in years, he felt truly free. Lauren sat in the middle of the bed, still gripping the letter Miles had left behind. Her hands trembled, her breathing shallow. Her mind raced as she tried to process the impossible. He was gone. Not just gone for the night. Not just angry and needing space. He had erased himself from their life together. Her heart pounded as she grabbed her phone and tried calling him again. Disconnected. She stared at the screen, her vision blurring with panic. She had spent years perfecting an image of luxury, success, and exclusivity, but in just a single day, everything had collapsed. Her bank accounts? Frozen her credit cards? Declined her reputation? Shattered. She needed to find him. Now. Lauren jumped up, threw on a coat, and rushed outside, her heels clicking against the pavement as she climbed into her car. She barely registered the drive, her thoughts consumed with only one thing: getting to Miles before it was too late. She needed to fix this. She needed him to listen. Because if he didn't, she would lose everything. Lauren drove straight to Miles' office, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. When she walked through the front doors of Carter and Associates, she expected whispers, judgmental glances, but she was met with something worse. Silence. The receptionist, a woman who had always greeted her with warm smiles, barely looked up. "I need to see Miles," Lauren said, trying to keep her voice even. The receptionist didn't even blink. "Mr. Carter no longer works here," she said flatly. Lauren's stomach dropped. "What? That's not possible." "I'm sorry," the woman continued, not sounding sorry at all. "He resigned last week." Lauren felt the blood drain from her face. Resigned? Her pulse raced. She hadn't even noticed. She turned on her heel and stormed out, dialing every number she could think of: his assistant, his colleagues, even his old friends. Nothing. Miles Carter had disappeared, and he had done it on purpose. By evening, Lauren had exhausted every option. She had driven by their old house, checked his gym, even gone to his favorite bar, but there was no trace of him. Finally, in desperation, she went to the only place she hadn't checked yet: his sister Lisa's house. Lauren parked outside, gripping the steering wheel. This was her last chance. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the car and walked up to the front door. She knocked 3 times, waiting, hoping. A few seconds later, the door swung open. Lisa stood there, arms crossed, looking completely unimpressed. "I figured you'd show up eventually," she said dryly. "Lisa, I need to see Miles," Lauren pleaded. "Please, I just need to talk to him." Lisa tilted her head. "Oh, you suddenly care about talking now? That's funny, because last time I checked, you weren't too concerned about him when you were screwing Brandon in hotel rooms." Lauren's stomach twisted. "This isn't what you think," she said quickly. Lisa laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Oh, honey, it's exactly what I think. And trust me, Miles, he's doing better than ever." Lauren swallowed. "Where is he?" Lisa stepped forward, dropping her voice to a sharp whisper. "You don't get to know that." Lauren flinched. Lisa smiled coldly. "But I'll tell you what you do get, exactly what you deserve." And with that, she slammed the door in Lauren's face. Miles sat on the terrace of his new penthouse, sipping a whiskey as he watched the city lights below. Everything had gone exactly as planned. Lauren had lost access to his money. Brandon's real estate empire was crumbling. His reputation? Destroyed. And Miles? For the first time in years, he was at peace. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. "Connor." He answered lazily. "Tell me something good." Connor chuckled. "Oh, you're going to love this. Brandon had a full-on meltdown in a meeting today. Word is, his investors are pulling out faster than he can lie his way out of trouble." Miles smirked, swirling his whiskey. "That was always the plan." "Oh, and you'll appreciate this. Connor continued. Lauren? She showed up at Lisa's house looking for you. Miles raised an eyebrow. And? Connor laughed. Lisa chewed her out and sent her packing. Apparently, she looked completely wrecked. Miles exhaled slowly. He should have felt something, pity, satisfaction, maybe even the urge to see her one last time. But all he felt was nothing. That chapter of his life was over. Anything else? He asked. Well, Connor said, amusement in his voice. Brandon's ex-wife? She just filed a lawsuit against him. Apparently, she's planning to take half of everything he has left. Miles chuckled, shaking his head. Poetic justice. He ended the call and leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. Everything was falling into place. But most importantly, he was finally free. Lauren sat in her dark apartment, staring at her reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her was unrecognizable. Her career? Ruined. Her bank accounts? Empty. Brandon? Gone. She had spent years believing she was above consequences, thinking she could have it all without paying the price. And now? Now she had nothing. She picked up her phone, scrolling through her old messages with Miles. At the top, her most recent one still sat unread. Lauren. I made a mistake. Please, Miles, just talk to me. No response. And there never would be. Because Miles Carter was gone. And he was never coming back. Lauren sat in her dimly lit apartment, gripping a half-empty glass of wine. The bottle next to her was almost gone. Much like everything else in her life. Just weeks ago, she had everything, a successful husband, a thriving career, and a lifestyle most people only dreamed of. Now, her bank accounts were empty. Her job was hanging by a thread. Brandon, the man she threw everything away for, had abandoned her. She had tried everything to reach Miles. She had called, texted, emailed, even tried to go through mutual friends. But it was useless. He had cut her off completely. She scrolled through her phone, looking at the messages she had sent him over the past few days. Lauren. Please, just talk to me. Lauren. I made a mistake. I know that now. Lauren. You can't just erase me like this. Lauren. I miss you. All of them were unread. She clenched her jaw, tossing the phone onto the couch. She needed to do something. Lauren arrived at Carter and Associates the next morning, determined to fix things. She walked through the lobby with purpose, trying to ignore the way people stared at her. She knew what they were thinking. They had all seen the headlines. They had all heard the rumors. Lauren didn't care. She marched up to the receptionist's desk. I need to see Miles, she said, keeping her voice steady. The woman barely looked up. He doesn't work here anymore. Lauren's stomach twisted. That's impossible. The receptionist gave her a blank stare. He resigned last month. Lauren blinked, taking a step back. He had left his own law firm? She shook her head. This couldn't be happening. Before she could say another word, the receptionist continued. And before you ask, no, I don't know where he is. Have a good day. Then, she turned back to her computer as if Lauren didn't exist. Lauren clenched her fists, her breath coming in sharp bursts. Miles had planned everything. He hadn't just left her, he had made sure she would never find him. She stormed out of the building, feeling a mix of rage, regret, and absolute panic. She needed to think. She needed to figure out how to get to him. And then, an idea struck her. Lisa. Lauren pulled up to Lisa's house later that afternoon, her stomach twisting with nerves. Lisa had never liked her. But she was Miles' sister. She had to know where he was. Taking a deep breath, Lauren knocked on the door. It opened a few seconds later, and Lisa stood there, arms crossed, looking completely unimpressed. Lauren swallowed hard. I need to see Miles. Lisa let out a short laugh. Oh, sweetheart, that ship has sailed. Lauren tried to keep her voice steady. Please, Lisa, just tell me where he is. I just need to talk to him. Lisa tilted her head, pretending to think. Let's see, you cheated on my brother, humiliated him, destroyed his trust, and then expected him to just stay and take it. And now that you've lost everything, you want me to help you find him? Lauren's eyes burned. It's not like that. Lisa stepped closer, her voice dropping. Oh, it's exactly like that. Lauren opened her mouth to argue, but Lisa cut her off. You had everything, Lauren. You had a man who loved you, built a life with you, trusted you, And you threw him away for what? A sleazy real estate mogul who tossed you aside the second things got hard. Lauren flinched. I made a mistake. Lisa smirked. Yeah, and now? You get to live with it. She stepped back and slammed the door in Lauren's face. Lauren stood there, frozen, her breath shaky. This was it. She had nowhere left to turn. No Miles, no job, no money. Nothing. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she turned and walked back to her car. For the first time in her life, she knew what it felt like to be completely alone. Miles sat on the balcony of his new penthouse, watching the sun set over the city. A light breeze carried the scent of fresh air, freedom, and for the first time in a long time, he felt peace. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Connor. He picked up, already knowing it would be good news. Tell me something interesting, Miles said, sipping his whiskey. Oh, you're going to love this. Connor replied, amusement in his voice. Brandon? He just lost 2 major investors. Word is, his real estate empire is circling the drain. Miles smirked. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. Oh, and Lauren? Connor continued. She showed up at Lisa's today. Miles exhaled through his nose. And? Connor chuckled. Let's just say Lisa gave her a reality check. Hard. Miles leaned back in his chair, stretching. He had expected this. Lauren was scrambling, but he didn't care anymore. She wasn't his problem. Anything else? Miles asked. Oh yeah, Connor said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. Brandon's ex-wife? She just filed a lawsuit against him. She's taking half of everything he has left. Miles grinned. Perfect. Connor laughed. Man, I gotta say, this is the best revenge story I've ever seen play out. Miles tilted his glass. It's not revenge, Connor. It's karma. He ended the call and let out a deep breath. For the first time in years, he wasn't looking back. He was finally moving forward. And damn, it felt good. Lauren sat alone in her apartment, staring at the eviction notice on her coffee table. She had missed 2 payments. She had no job prospects. Her bank account was almost empty. She had spent years thinking she was untouchable, that she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. But now, she was just another forgotten woman. She picked up her phone, scrolling through her contacts, stopping at Miles' name. Her fingers hovered over the call button. Would he even answer? Would he even care? Tears blurred her vision. She had destroyed the only person who had ever truly loved her. And now, he had moved on. She was nothing to him. Lauren set the phone down. For the first time in her life, she had to accept that she had lost. She had played the game. And Miles? He had won. Miles sat on the rooftop terrace of his new penthouse, the Los Angeles skyline glowing beneath him. The city was alive, buzzing with the energy of opportunity and reinvention. He swirled the whiskey in his glass, savoring the smooth burn as he leaned back in his chair. For the first time in years, he felt completely free. The past few months had been a whirlwind, moving out, finalizing the divorce, and watching karma dismantle both Lauren and Brandon. But now, there was nothing left tying him to the past. No more legal battles. No more waiting for the other shoe to drop. Lauren was out of his life. Brandon was on the brink of ruin. And Miles? Miles was just getting started. Connor called just as Miles was finishing his drink. Hope you're sitting down for this, Connor said, amusement laced in his voice. Miles smirked. I'm listening. Brandon's empire? Gone. Investors have pulled out completely. His latest project got shut down due to financial discrepancies, and the IRS is looking into his books. Miles let out a low chuckle. He always did play fast and loose with his numbers. Connor continued. His ex-wife? She cleaned him out in the divorce. He tried to negotiate, but the judge wasn't buying his woe is me act. Miles shook his head, half amused. And Lauren? Connor snorted. She tried crawling back to him, but word on the street is he won't even return her calls. Miles laughed. The irony was almost too perfect. Lauren had traded a loyal husband for a high-risk gamble. And in the end, she lost it all. Across the city, Lauren sat in her nearly empty apartment, staring at the eviction notice on the table. Her last savings were gone, her career was unsalvageable, and Brandon had cut her off completely. She had spent the past month trying to rebuild, reaching out to old clients, networking, even begging former colleagues for referrals. But no one wanted to work with someone whose name was tied to a public cheating scandal. She thought about calling Miles. But the last time she had tried, it went straight to voicemail. She tried texting him weeks ago. No response. Her pride had kept her from showing up at his penthouse. But now she had nothing left to lose. She needed to see him. One last time. Lauren hesitated outside Miles' building, her hands trembling. The doorman barely spared her a glance as he let her in. She took the elevator up, her stomach twisting with nerves. What would she even say? When she reached his door, she took a deep breath and knocked. A few moments later, the door swung open, and there he was. Miles looked better than ever. Relaxed, confident, like a man who had let go of the past. Her chest tightened. Hey. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Lauren. She swallowed hard. Can I come in? Miles studied her for a long moment before sighing. Why are you here? She forced a small smile. I wanted to talk. He raised an eyebrow. About what? She hesitated. About us. Miles let out a short laugh, not cruel, but amused. There is no us. Lauren, he said. Her stomach dropped. Miles, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But you just what? He interrupted. You just realized you made the biggest mistake of your life? You just figured out that Brandon was never going to be the man I was? Lauren's breath hitched. I miss you. Miles tilted his head slightly. You miss me? Or you miss the life you had with me? She hesitated for half a second too long. And that was his answer. Miles exhaled, running a hand through his hair. You know what the difference is between us, Lauren? He asked, his tone calm. She shook her head, her throat tight. I would have never done this to you. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Miles, please, she whispered. We had years together, and you threw them away. He said simply. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Lauren swallowed her pride. Can we at least be friends? Miles smirked. Lauren, I don't need any more friends. And I sure as hell don't need you. And with that, he shut the door. For good. Back inside, Miles took a deep breath. That was it. The final closure he didn't even know he needed. His phone buzzed. It was Olivia. Olivia. Dinner at 7? Miles smiled. Miles. Absolutely. Can't wait. He set the phone down and grabbed his keys. As he stepped out onto the streets of Los Angeles, the city felt different, not because it had changed. Because he had. For the first time in years. He wasn't looking back. He was moving forward. And it felt damn good. What would you have done in Miles' situation? Would you have confronted them immediately or destroyed them like he did?